romance comics. As a kid, I never had any use for them. And why would I? Those stories didn't feature monsters or rockets or superheroes. They were all about love. Who wanted to read a comic book about that? Well, bless my naive little heart. How could I know that at one point romance comics outsold my favorite superheroes? How could I be aware that romance comics featured work by some of the great artists of the industry? I mean, look at them. I know, not exactly an enlightened attitude in 2019, but the point is, I was a stupid kid. Now that I'm a stupid adult, I know better. Frazada, Adams, Kirby. I'd be cutting my nose off to spite my face if I ignored these little gems just because they were romance comics. And though they don't receive the sort of attention that their more mainstream superhero work brings, these still provide dazzling examples of art from creators at the top of their game. That said, the bulk of romance comics seem to feature more workmanlike creators. For every Adams, there are dozens of artists whose names are only known to the most ardent devotees of the medium. And that's where the real fun comes in. There's just so much to discover, so many wonderful examples of the medium we enjoy so much just waiting to be brought out into the light. Dream of Love number 8 is just such an example. Infamous Eerie Pubs publisher Myron Fass illustrates the lead story, featuring Dr. Anthony King, Hollywood psychiatrist. And yes, the exclamation point is my addition, but I feel that it's warranted. After all, this isn't just any old psychiatrist. This is Dr. Anthony King from Hollywood. Fass's art is fine, if a tad flat, except when he's drawing the busty women. That said, it's the story that's the real jaw-dropper here. Dr. King receives an emergency patient in the form of Pat Conway, movie starlet. It's Hollywood, would you believe? Pat has a real first-world problem, and that whenever her movie mogul boyfriend proposes marriage, she becomes repelled and feels ill. The good doctor effortlessly determines that Pat has a hidden repression, and only weeks of expensive treatment might relieve it. Making a big leap for even a Hollywood quack, Dr. A decides the best course of action is to give the young ingenue a heapin' helpin' of truth serum, the effect of which the writer seems to have confused with hypnotism. Dr. A sends Pat back to her days as a USO girl during World War II. Sent to an unnamed island in the Pacific to raise morale, our starlet immediately falls in love with some generic Steve Trevor type. All seems rosy for our lovebirds until Jim is dispatched on a raid over Tokyo. Oddly enough, when Jim's plane is damaged, he flies a kamikaze run into a Japanese ship in the harbor. I bet they didn't see that coming. At any rate, Pat develops a nasty case of amnesia as a result of her shock, and forgets Jim ever even existed, creating a mental block. Thanks to Dr. A's unconventional therapy and willingness to slam a needle full of squeal juice into Pat's femoral artery, our heroine is soon throwing herself into the arms of her mogul boyfriend, leaving Jim's sacrifice a bit muted. The book's second tale, The Artist and the Lady, seems a bit closer to the sort of story you'd expect to find in a standard romance comic. The art is bland, with little background detail, and the story is as uninspired as the art, focusing on the non-problems of Sandy, our protagonist. That's not actually her name, but the story is so dull I can't remember it, and I literally just read the damn thing. Sandy falls in love with the artist, becomes his subject and muse before exhibiting the decidedly unmuse-like behavior of leaving her boyfriend and going back to her old job at the grocery store. Her artist boyfriend doesn't miss a trick, lining up another chick between panels, but Sandy, driven by her mercurial nature, decides instead she wants him back and gets knocked up to prove it. Because this is a romance comic aimed at preteens, we don't see the infidelity, misery, and inevitable divorce certain to follow, so yay love. Now, if these had been the only two stories in this book, then I may have felt some justification in my previous dismissal of romance comics. However, Something astonishing happens after the fold, the sort of joyous discovery that occurs all too rarely in the life of a jaded comics reader. Ladies and gentlemen, but mostly ladies, I present to you Mr. John Juan. Written by Superman co-creator Jerry Siegel and illustrated by Alex Schomburg, John Juan shows just what a lot of those old romance comics at the time were missing, and that was fun. Billed as the one and only super lover, John's story gets off to a riotous start when we get a few glimpses of our apparently eternal hero throughout the ages, as he woos Cleopatra, Salome, and Lucrezia Borgia. And like the man said, it all began back in fabulous Atlantis, where John has already gained quite the reputation. Our hero is too sexy for his hometown, and he's driven out to sea. Hit by a pair of whatever ladies used for panties back then, our hero falls into the water in a state of suspended animation. John is frozen for decades in a block of ice. Luckily, a mysterious seaweed is frozen along with him. Decades of exposure to this miraculous plant imbue John with the gift of immortality, and with that, it's off to the races. Thawing out on a helpful island, John is immediately set upon by the local residents. Even centuries later, and the Juan's reputation precedes him. Luckily, John encounters Uga Maru, who just wants to clean her fish. John turns on the charm in the form of Smile Number 3, which we're told never fails, whatever that means. Uga is clearly taken. Never has she seen one so dashing, so magnetic, so gay, so clean. But I guess she's never been on Tinder before. Using her fish-cleaning knife, Uga Maru frees our hero and he makes a break for it, uttering the sort of dashingly anachronistic statement you could only find in a Golden Age comic. Like I said, this book is fun. And, while it ends on a sad note, it sets our hero up for greater adventures to come. Our next story also features John, but is a bit different in tone. Time has passed, and John has become a swingin' sultan, a kind of Doctor Strange of the Kama Sutra set. From his one-of-a-kind love archive at the peak of Tibet's highest mountain, he catalogs all of the women he has known over the centuries. One in particular has borne his notice, the enigmatically titled Lady in the Dark. His memory travels back through the years to pre-20th century Madrid, where he wooed the gorgeous Carmelita. When two women are set upon by brigands, John quickly dispatches the troublemakers, in the process encountering a beautiful veiled lady. John turns on the charm and asks to see beneath her veil, but remarkably, she turns and leaves. I guess he should have used Smile Number 3. John heads back to Carmelita, but her ardor has cooled. Oh well, it seems even Spain's greatest lover can't always win. Left directionless by his lack of female company, John does what anyone would do and heads to the bar. There, he receives a note. The lady in the dark wishes to see him. What a night! What a moon! What a girl! What luck! Born on the wings of love, John swoops in and gives the lady in the dark a kiss. However, she rebukes him once again. It seems she needs John's help, not his saliva. His lady lives in fear of the wicked Don Carlos, but before John can learn more, one of her brothers appears to protect his sibling's honor. John leaves the man unharmed, riding off into town. However, on the way, he is waylaid by the Don's men. Don Carlos, knowing the lady in the dark is now unprotected, hurries off to kill her, that he might inherit her fortune. However, the Don has underestimated the Juan. In moments, the Don is dispatched, poetically killed by his own blade. John attempts, once again, to catch a glimpse beneath his lady's veil, but she will not allow it, asking him instead to understand. Leaving him with a single rose, the lady in the dark vanishes at last into the night, leaving John perplexed. It is only her handmaiden's confession that brings the tragedy into focus. John's lady is, in fact, blind. We are left with a final panel of John considering the now glass-enclosed Rose, a bittersweet end for our once carefree hero. It's a heck of an ending for one hell of a story. Jerry Siegel is having a ball writing these, and it shows. The dialogue is sharp and the emotions genuine. The jokes are actually funny, while the romantic aspects are sweet but not overly saccharine. Schomburg's art is an absolute joy to behold. The storytelling is clean, concise, and quite honestly, too good for a book like this. And there's a reason for that, as the John Juan stories are actually reprints. These stories and others appeared in the John Juan one-shot from Toby Press. There doesn't seem to be a lot of info on this book or why it only had a single issue, and that's a shame. Personally, I would have loved to have seen this book go the distance, at least as long as Siegel and Schomburg were steering the ship. That said, John Juan has been around long enough that the character has entered into the public domain. Is the world ready for the return of the one and only super lover? I'm Jason Mink for the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics Network. Thanks for watching.